penguins. I'm not exactly sure where they are just now. I can see one who's just under the bridge on this side, and that's our new Olaf, one of our infamous penguins here at the zoo. And another species that we have are the rock hopper penguins. Most of them are in the small enclosure where the gentry chicks are. Most of them will be at the back enclosure. That's the area where they nest and tend to sit a lot of the time as well. There's also a small group just inside the main enclosure, just on the other side of the bridge, to the right of the steps that we've come up into the enclosure as well. They're the small species that we have, and they're called crested penguins, so they've got a lovely yellow crest on either side of their head as well, so they're quite a striking bird as well as the kings too.
And our gentry penguins that we've got out here in front of us, a couple of them are looking a little bit scruffy at the minute, so can you just tell us a little bit more about what's going on with them?
Yes, so the gentry penguins, after their breeding season is finished, they go through an annual molt. All the penguin species go through an annual molt. It's really important that they replace all their old worn out feathers and they grow some new ones, and that's what's happening just now with a lot of them. Many of them have actually already been through the molt. All the ones that are in the pool that are swimming up and down looking really good, they've already molted out. Their feathers are looking lovely and brand new and nice and sharp. But there's quite a few around here, especially this one just to my right. He's right in the middle of his annual molt. So he looks really big and chunky just now, and he's still kind of brownish colour too. The brown colour is really just because the feathers that they do have are really quite old and worn out. They should really be, as you can see, the nice grey, almost blackish colour in the back. So when they get that sort of brown stage, that's when they're needing to molt out and then replace their feathers. He's right in the middle of the molt now, so he's looking really big and puffy because the feathers come through, the new feathers come through rather, as the old feathers are still there. So when the new ones grow, they push the old ones out. And so they quite often look quite big and chunky, but it's because they're almost wearing two coats, the equivalent of us wearing two coats. So that's kind of what's happening just now with a lot of them. There's several on the nest out here are really losing the old ones, so they're falling out. So they might just have a tuft of old ones still on the back of their neck or down their back, or maybe somewhere else in their body. So they don't look at their best just now, but once they have molted out, they look fantastic. And so a lot of the ones that are in the pool and swimming around are really enjoying the fact that they're able to get back in the pool and swim about now. Because while they're molting, the feathers aren't waterproof. They need to make sure the feathers are completely waterproof before they go in the water. And because they're not waterproof when they're molting, they basically just sit outside and sit out in the land and let that period of molting pass. They also shouldn't really have much of an appetite either. In the wild, when they're molting, what they do is they have to go to sea and fill themselves up with fish beforehand and really get themselves a good layer of fat on their bodies, so that while they're molting, they pretty much just survive on this fat layer. They can't go to sea, they can't catch their food. Obviously here in the zoo they get hand-fed, so they are fed on land, but their appetites follow the same sort of pattern as the wild birds do as well. And so they're really just sitting the molt out. So a lot of the birds here, when Gemma comes up with the fish, they won't really see them heading over to her to get fed. They won't really be all that interested. They'll be all the ones that are finished the molt, or any that are left that are due to come up the molt that'll be the hungriest. That's something that every single penguin species goes through every year. The rock hoppers are also molting this time of year. We've got a couple of them looking really scruffy. But the king penguins don't molt at this time of year. They molt before their breeding season, so they look really good in time for their breeding season. So they've been looking good for quite a while now. They molt out in the springtime, just when everybody else is getting ready for nesting.
Okay, now you'll be able to see the penguins getting fed just after the talk, but when you feed the penguins, you actually hand feed them, which seems like quite a big job considering the number of penguins that we've got here at Edinburgh Zoo. So can you just tell us a little bit more about why you choose to feed the penguins in this way?
Well, there's a lot of good reasons why we choose to hand feed. We just generally feel it is better for the penguins because we're able to monitor much more closely. We're not really monitoring how many fish every single penguin eats on a daily basis, but we are monitoring who is feeding and who's not feeding while we're doing it and feeding. There's actually this time of year 3 feeds a day. This will be the second feed a day. They've had one already in the morning and they'll get one later on in the afternoon. So we've got 3 different opportunities to get fed. And what happens is when Gemma does come up with the fish, you'll see that all the hungry birds will be the ones that go over to her and feed straight away. And they might have one fish, they might have as many as 8 or 9. It's completely up to them. And they are all different in their appetites and what's normal for every bird. Isn't necessarily normal for the next bird. But generally what they'll do is they usually pace themselves and have a few fish at every single feed. Some birds prefer just to eat lots and lots at one feed. It just depends. It's completely up to them. So we let them eat what they want when they want. So when we're feeding them, we're just keeping an eye out, making sure we've seen who comes up. And so if there's any particular bird that hasn't come up at every single feed and over the space of a few days, then that's a bird we think, well, there may be something wrong with it. If it's not going through its molt and there's no reason for it not to have much of an appetite, then for it not to eat over a couple of days isn't a very good sign. If a penguin doesn't eat anything in one day, it's not really that abnormal. In the wild, they're quite opportunistic when they feed, and sometimes they can have loads and loads in one day, and then that will tide them over 2 days. Some birds do prefer just to feed that way, but generally most of our birds will have a certain amount every single day. So when we're feeding, we're basically just checking them all over, keeping an eye on them all. And we obviously check them first thing every morning, but when we're feeding, it's a good chance to check them close up, make sure they're all well and healthy. If they maybe had a little problem with their eye, maybe even just a little cut around their eye area, or their beak, or their feet, something like that, It's only because we're close to them while we're feeding that we'd be able to see that. If they were just swimming in the pool at a distance away from us, we wouldn't be able to see that at all. It would make it very difficult for us to monitor any health problems any of them might have. And if